for those kind words. I'm Larry Easterling. I'm a Methodist minister. Anybody grow up a Methodist here? Oh, there are a few. I feel connected. I grew up in a little town for the first 10 years of Flemingsburg, Kentucky. And of course, most of my friends were either Methodist or Baptist. That was the two faith groups. And we used to banter back and forth about which faith was the right one. The one I remember the most, the one that got me the most, was one day a friend of mine said, Methodists are like little puppies. And I said, what do you mean Methodists are like little puppies? Well, they're Methodists until their eyes are open and then they become Baptist. That friend would be incredibly surprised that I'm here in a Baptist church tonight. I'm going to tell a couple stories and then do just a little reflection on those stories. First, I'd like to share a quote that comes from a TV program in the early 90s, I'll Fly Away. It was about the civil rights struggle of that time. And one of the main characters, Lily, used to reflect at the end of the TV program about her day. And here's what she said on one of those reflections. Sometimes late at night, I listen for the sound of my father's breathing in the room next to mine. I crawl under the covers next to Adeline, her daughter. Her neck smells like orange rinds. We press memories small as these in the palms of our hands and carry them throughout our days. Memories small as these in the palm of our hands and carry them throughout our days. Hang on to that quote. I'll come back to it later. In 1997, my father called a family conference. The four of us were spread across the United States. I was in Texas at the time. And we all gathered in our living room in Richmond, Kentucky. And he told us that he had cancer and that things did not look good. And that what he decided to do, or was deciding to do, was not to have it treated because of the aggressive nature of the cancer he had. And he looked at us and said, what do you think? So we were all kind of taken aback, and I was thinking, I was a chaplain at the time, oh dear, now I'm going to be a chaplain to my own family. This is going to be hard. I'm not sure I can do this. And we all sort of expressed our support of him and our grief about his situation. And then he said, you know what? I am just so grateful. Grateful for life. Grateful for you all. There were four of us, 2 sisters, 2 brothers. I'm just grateful for the life that I've had with your mother, and I thank God for everything that has gone on in my life. And then he led us in prayer. I was shocked. I was shocked at the depth of his spirituality. I knew he was a man of faith. I did not know that he was that deep. That's one of the memories of our family that we carry in the palms of our hands. It was a sacred moment. And whenever we talk about it, we talk about how sacred that time was. Second story. 21 years ago, that was my father. 15 years ago, my mom fell in the backyard when she was raking leaves and broke her hip. Or maybe she broke her hip and then fell. We're not quite sure which way that goes. She was in and out of rehab centers for months, and near the end of her rehab, she had a stroke. And she was in a lot of pain, and she went to a stroke center in Lexington, Kentucky. Anybody know Lexington, Kentucky? Oh, there's a few. Wow, there's a whole group. Methodist in Lexington, Kentucky. I really do feel connected now. Well, she went to the stroke center there at St. Joseph's Hospital in Lexington, Kentucky. And like I said, she was in lots of pain. And in fact, she was in so much pain that she had sort of a 1,000-yard stare. You've seen people in pain like that. And she was being treated by the hospitalist there, but she had rheumatoid arthritis and had had it virtually all of her adult life. And so she needed a specialist to treat that. And she did have a doctor there in Lexington that worked with her on her rheumatoid arthritis, but unfortunately he wasn't on call that weekend. But she knew who was. And nobody in the family liked him. And she didn't like him, but the only way you could tell that she didn't like this guy was she never said anything about him. And she always had a phrase, if you can't say anything nice about somebody, you don't say anything at all. So she never said anything at all about him, so we knew it was bad. Well, he was the one that was on call, and we were discussing about, when he got there and how we would manage it. And one of the nurses sidled up to us and said, we have a palliative care program here that works with pain management. And the doctor is Dr. Pham. So just want to let you know, and backed out. So we talked about it as a family, and we did call for a pain consult. Well, I happened to be in the room when I forget his name, the rheumatoid arthritis guy, that nobody liked, came into the room. And he came into the room and he walked around on that side of the bed. Mom was here. And he looked down and said, now, Mrs. Easterling, the best thing to do in this situation is just to bite the bullet. And we call him Dr. Bite the Bullet to this day, actually. And I said, well, we did call for a pain consult. And so I just want to let you know that. And he looked at me and said, just somebody else to stir the brew. And he walked out of the room and down the hall. We never saw him again, which was all right for us. And Dr. Pham came, and she was an Asian American. She was this tall. And she did something that nobody else was able to do up till that time, where she walked up to my mom and said, Mrs. Easterling, how can we control your pain? And they had this long discussion, and they gave her a pain patch, and she came back out of that 1,000-yard stare, and there she was. Well, and that was sort of a physical renewal, but that same day, she asked for mashed potatoes and gravy. And so that was the first thing she'd eaten in a couple of days. And Julia, I think, was actually there when she got the mashed potatoes and gravy, and that was the first thing she ate. It was chicken gravy with mashed potatoes, because she was from northeastern Kentucky, and that's the favorite gravy. Anybody from Kentucky? Northeastern? Oh, there's some more. Okay. Southeastern Kentucky. Oh, that's okay. I know Pineville and Hazard and that bunch of people down there, Whitesburg. Yeah. Harlan. Yeah. I know where Harlan is too. It's probably not that bloody, but you probably got stories to tell. Anyway, where was I? Mashed potatoes and gravy. Yeah, thank you. And the interesting thing, that same day, there was a group of singers in the hospital that were going around singing a cappella and asking for people if they had a request, and then they would sing it. Now, interestingly enough, they were a group of Presbyterian singers. But my mother grew up Church of Christ, independent, non-instrumental, and so that was just right for her. And she asked for, let's go down to the river to pray, asking God about, or what's the words, Heather?
Down to the river to pray.
Studying about that good old way. Who will have the robe and crown? Oh Lord, show me the way. So they sang that. And then she came back and her spirit was renewed. So she had a physical renewal with pain management and mashed potatoes and gravy. And then she had a spiritual renewal with a group of Presbyterians singing a cappella. It's interesting. So a few months later, she went into hospice. And we all circled around her bed on the last day or two of her life and sang hymns a cappella out of a Methodist hymnal. It's the only hymnal we had in the house. Another sacred moment, being with our mother. Another memory to hold in the palm of our hands. Why did I tell you these stories? Sacred moments for my family, of course. You have sacred moments of your own and sacred memories of your own. Chaplains have the privilege of being with families in some of the most distressing and difficult times of their lives and sharing with them some of the most sacred moments of their lives. It's a privilege. Another piece to this is my dad was a vet. You'll probably hear some more about the VA. Never talked about it much, but he did share one story. He was in the Navy, and when he got out in 1945, I think he got out in the summer of 1945, but it took a long time to muster out. And he got out on Christmas Eve, and he was in the Great Lakes Naval Station up in Illinois. And he traveled all day on Christmas Eve and all night that night. And he walked the last 7 miles to get home to Blair's Mills, Kentucky, in northeastern Kentucky, to get home on Christmas morning. He walked into the house. Actually, his collie met him about a mile from the house and walked him in. Came up on the porch, opened the screen door and walked in and walked into the kitchen and said, "Hi, Mom, I'm home." He said that was the best Christmas ever. My mom benefited from palliative care team, control the pain. And in the last few months of her life, she had quality of life and lots of people visited. When I was a teenager, people would come over, my friends would come over to the house to see my mother, really, because she had milk and cookies, and she was just fun for them to be with. Some of them dropped in, and of course our pastor, and her sister came the day before she died, and they spent time reminiscing about growing up. That was all because of palliative care and Dr. Pham and controlling her pain. Some families have to carry those memories for their loved ones because their memories have slipped away. And you have to carry those for them. And Tammy will probably say something about that. So, chaplains. We attempt to be empathetic because we know something about sorrow and difficult times, because we're human beings. We're also aware, again and again, that we are privileged to share in the most precious memories of people's lives at some of the most difficult times in their lives. Carry those memories in the palm of your hands throughout the rest of your days. Thank you for inviting us in, and I will try to track down my childhood friend, my Baptist friend, and he will be surprised when I tell him of being here. Thank you.